Good morning, East Point. We are so glad you can join us online. Let's start worshiping together.
Jesus, the only one who could ever save.
before creation, eternity in your hand. You spoke the earth into motion, my soul now to stand. You stood before my fame, carried the cross for my shame. My sin weighed upon your shoulders, my soul now to stand. So what can I say?
same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. And yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. And yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh yes, I will. I count on one thing. The same God that never fails will not fail me now. You won't fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. And yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh yes, I will for all my days. Oh yes, I will. I choose to praise, to glorify, name above names, and nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify, name above names, nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, glorify, name above names, that nothing can stand against. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Oh yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh yes, I will for all my days. Oh yes, I will for all my days. Oh yes, I
You are here, moving in our midst. I worship you. I worship you. You are here, working in this place. I worship you. I worship you. Light in the darkness, my God, that is who you are.
Turning lives around.
just glad that you're here with us today. If you are new here, welcome. We hope you enjoyed our worship. If you've been here for a while, welcome back. We are really happy to see you. We're just grateful to be in the space here today. A lot of awesome stuff happening, a lot of exciting things going on. We're just glad that you can be a part of it. We just want to encourage you. We want to invite you in. And so if you are here and you're on Facebook, or not, that's fine too, but we would love for you to check in. Go to Facebook and check in and hashtag love God, love others. It's a great way to let folks know that you're here with us, let folks know that you're a part of our East Point family, and it goes a long way in sharing, just a really easy way to share East Point with your friends and family. So if you're on Facebook, we'd love for you to do that. And then if you haven't signed up yet, actually we had 2 new signups this week for our text service. If you text the word East Point to 94000, that gets you connected, gets you plugged in. So all of our updates, all of our announcements, everything comes through this message system. And so you don't have to be on Facebook, you don't have to be on YouTube to get plugged in this way. And it's a great way to stay connected. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening over the next few weeks and months, a lot of cool things with the building, a lot of cool things with volunteer opportunities, and just a great number of things to get plugged in and get connected. And so make sure that you have signed up. Again, East Point to 94000. And then, as always, we want to take a moment and take our offering. And so you can give a few different ways here at East Point. You can give online at our East Point website, which is eastpoint.org/give. You can use that texting service to also text to get a link sent right to your phone. So if you text the one word, give to EP, to 94000, you will get a link right back where you can click and it takes you right to our giving site. And you can also still mail a check if you'd like to do that. You can mail a check right here to the house here on the property, which is 4087 Kirkwood St. George's Road, Barre, Delaware, 19701. So just before we get into the rest of our announcements, I'm going to ask God to just bless our offering. God, today we are just grateful and we're thankful for who you are, God. As we worship reflected today just on who you are, God, the greatness you have, and we're excited to be a part of your work and your love here throughout the Barre community, God. We ask today that you would please bless the offering we're about to receive, bless those funds, multiply those funds, God. As we have upcoming projects, the construction here at the house, the work on the property, Lord, and just all the things that we're doing to further grow your mission here in Barre and in Delaware, God. We ask that you please bless all those who give, bless those who are part of this, God, and help us just to have the strength, the perseverance, God, to see it through and to just, just really be excited and really be living in the moment of what we're here for and what we're doing, God. This is all for you, and we just can't wait to see what you have for us, God. We're just so grateful and thankful. In your name we pray. Amen. So a couple of quick things. We shared this last week or the last couple of weeks. We're really excited. We have selected a contractor, and so we are getting prepared to move forward with construction here at the house. And so in doing so, as we've shared, we need to finance that construction. And so our goal is to raise $250,000. That would be inclusive of the complete redo of the house. We're going to create a main worship space, a community center. We're going to have a kitchen. We'll have a handful of bathrooms. We'll have some offices that are also going to double as our children's rooms, and so we'll be able to have our children's ministries back in full swing again. And so just a lot of amazing, amazing things. JD and I are going to film a video today, a walkthrough of the property, so we can kind of give you an idea of where things are going to be, what it's going to look like when it's all said and done, and so that you know what you're donating towards and just how awesome it's going to be. And so we're really excited. If you go to the eastpoint.org/giving website, you can, under the giving section here, find the building fund. And so if you select that, the funds that you give will be set aside for the building. And so we're asking you to pray about what you'd have God ask you to give. We're asking that you give above and beyond your normal giving, and that amount can be anything. It can be a few dollars a week. It can be one lump sum. It can be whatever God has laid on your heart. And so, as I mentioned, something that actually popped in my head this morning that I thought was a great way to look at it is like, me and Sandra, we're all in. Our leaders here at East Point, we're all in. And we hope that you'll be all in with us because we're all in on East Point's future. There's so many great things ahead for us, and having a centralized spot that is our community, is our family center, we need this, and we're excited for it. And so be praying, be asking God what he can have you give. And if you can't give, that's okay too. We're okay with that. No big deal. We want to meet you where you are, and so that's okay. But what we ask is for everyone to pray and just ask God to move and to work and to bless this effort as we move forward. There's a lot to be done, and one of those things is actually next weekend, we're going to be clearing the house out in preparation for that construction. So if you can volunteer on Saturday the 6th, we are going to be getting a truck. We're going to be getting everything that's in this house out. And then for the exciting part that I'm really excited for is the demolition is going to happen after that. So that's another volunteer day. But to get to that, we have to get everything out of here. So Saturday next week, we're going to be here on Saturday. Elise has got all the details. If you want to connect or have questions, email elise@eastpoint.org. I imagine we're going to be starting in the morning. I haven't got a definite time yet, but we'll confirm this week, and we'll share it on Facebook at an event, and we'll email out as well. And we'll also send it through the text message. So if you're connected, you'll get plugged in. And as I always say, the more the merrier, and the more the faster. So if you can be here for Saturday morning, plan on being here. We'll get everything loaded up and get it over to the storage unit, and then we'll be all ready for demolition and set up for construction. So I believe the last thing here is our post-service connection. So every week, a bunch of us get together afterwards on Zoom. We get a chance to see each other, say hi, see how it's going. The last few weeks have been a blast. We've had a handful of folks. Actually, I think it's kind of been growing the last few weeks. So if you'd like to be a part of that, there's an event on Facebook. You got a link in your text this morning if you're a part of the text alerts, and then I will drop a link in the comments below today. So we hope to see you right after the service on Zoom for a few minutes just to say hi and see how you're doing. And then yeah, we're just glad you're here. We're excited for what God has for us, and we're excited to hear what JD is going to preach to us about this morning. So with that, JD.
Mike, I can do that. Is it? Can you hear me? Okay, great. Hey, we had a moment of technical difficulty, but that's all right. We are back, and we are glad to be back. I was just going to follow up on the text, the 94000 that we talked about, and Josh says you're going to get every text that we send out. I want to assure you, we're not going to blow your phone up. That involves about 2 to 3 texts per week. And they're reminders, and they're instant links, so you don't have to look up the links. I mean, I subscribe to it, and I never subscribe to these types of things because I don't like getting a whole bunch of stuff that blows my phone up, but I subscribe, and I love it because after the service, for the post-service thing, I can just click on the link, and it's there, and we like to be able to do those types of things. So and I do encourage you to do that because it's a great way for us to stay in touch. Hey, today is the last day of Nehemiah. Now, that doesn't mean you can't go back and read him as many times as you want after we are done with today's service, but this concludes our series on Nehemiah and the things we're looking at. And if you're following along in your Bible, we're going to go from chapter 9 up through chapter 13. We're going to knock it all out here in one swoop as we look at the rest of it. Okay? We ended last week with looking at how they had a party for 7 days. And they were celebrating because of what God had done. And this was like they built the wall, they were excited, and I don't know that we're going to have a 7-day party after this house is done, but hey, I'm open. I'll free up some time. If you want to free up some time, we'll get together and party. But that's what they did when they finished up the wall. And we're going to move in here into the 8th day. Now, last week I encouraged you, I challenged you to look at your life. Are you marking things? Are you celebrating? Are you finding ways on a daily basis to celebrate? I hope you did that this week, and I hope that it helped improve your week. That when you find that there's something to celebrate every day, it improves and gives you an attitude of gratefulness. And that's what we're happy to see happen, is that attitude of gratefulness. What we're looking for now is we're going to go on to, this is the 8th day of the celebration, and this is actually how the Festival of Booths is done. The 8th day of it is another solemn assembly. It is where they get together, and one of the things that they do is that they read the word again, and they listen to what's going on, and they have a period of just reflecting on what God has done. And in this particular case, one of the things they did is they went and they rehearsed the history of Israel. Now, this is a very important thing that you'll see happening a lot in the Old Testament. In fact, you'll even see it in the New Testament, where as a way of understanding what God is doing, they go back to the beginning and say, remember where we were, what took place. And they've had a whole week where they were learning about their history, which was largely forgotten. And so they took that and they were learning their history again and going over it. And so they go all the way back, and they pretty much start back at Abram. They don't go all the way back to Adam, but they go back to Abram before he was Abraham, and talks about he was called out from the the Ur of the Chaldees, and he became Abraham, and he married Sarai, who became Sarah. They had kids, all this stuff, and he was promised land and the covenant. But he looked at how God had, through time, kept bringing them along, and that they would then fall back. They would have things that would not work for them. And they went into slavery, into Egypt, and they looked at that. In fact, the whole reason for the Festival of Booths was because it was a looking at, we were in slavery in Egypt, and he brought us out, and our ancestors tabernacled in the desert, and that's why they have this Feast of Tabernacles, or Booths, because that's what they were remembering. But they were recognizing that there was this real pattern with the people, is that they would follow God, and he would bless them, and they would do amazing things, and then they would just get comfortable and complacent, and they would start to do all the things they said they weren't going to do, and they would get in trouble. And so they have a couple, in chapter 9, starting in verse 29, he says, you warned them to return to your law, but they became proud and obstinate and disobeyed your commands. They did not follow your regulations, by which people will find life if only they obey. And you should embroider that on a pillow and throw it on your couch or on your bed, something like that, that we will find life if only we will obey. And we'll find that in him. They stubbornly turned their backs on you and refused to listen. This is, and what I'm seeing here, this is the thing that's interesting. They are recognizing this is our history. This is what goes on. And all of us are very good at being able to look and see what others did that didn't work. And, they say, and they're looking and saying, I can't believe what they did. And then they say, even, this is in just a few verses later, even while they had their own kingdom, they did not serve you. Remember, right now, these people are just they're trying to get a city. They're trying to get a wall up and some safety. The whole idea of having a kingdom, that was something long in the past. It said, even while they had their own kingdom, they did not serve you, though you showered your goodness on them. You gave them a large, fertile land, but they refused to turn from their wickedness. And I just think it's easy. It's interesting how easy it is for us to move into a judgmental attitude of others. And I think this happens, quite honestly, for Christians a lot when we read the Bible. I've heard people say, man, if only I were alive when Jesus walked the earth, I would have definitely been, one who was believing in him. I would have followed him. I wouldn't have been like all those people that crucified him. Well, statistically speaking, no, you were likely to be a person who crucified him. That's just what the reality is. Most people rejected him. And it's easy for us to look back and say, man, if only I was around, if I would have seen Jesus' miracles, if I would have seen this. Even the people at that time said, well, if you'll just show us miracles, we'll believe. And he said, you don't want to see miracles so you can believe. You want to see miracles because you liked it when I made the bread so plentiful and you could all eat for free. You're here for a free fish and chips meal. It's kind of what he fed them. It was more like fish and bread. But and he said, that's not going to help you. And we can look and say, man, if only I was like around when Jesus was, or if only I had seen these particular things, I would have believed in God. And this is, I think, a great opportunity for us to look and say, would we really? Would we really? Because this is what they're saying here in Nehemiah's day, that I can't believe that they had their own kingdom, they had all these blessings, and still they turned their back on you. And so they made a covenant with God on this day. They made an agreement with him, and through a series of promises. And, of course, when I read that, the first thing I think about is how not that long ago, as a body, we made a covenant. And we wrote it down, and we signed it with our hands, and we hung it on the wall, and we still have that. And that will be something that will go up when we finish the building as it's done. We will hang that again so we can see that and remember it, because it's important for us to remember because it's so easy to forget. But they made several promises. And the promises they made were that they would not have any intermarriage. Now, this does not mean that God is against interracial marriages. God had said for a period and for a time, he says, I'm going to set apart my people. And when you marry these other people, part of what you're doing is you go over and you follow their gods. You don't follow me anymore. He says, and I don't want you to intermarry because I don't want you to follow their gods. That was the prohibition that was there. And he said, we're not going to do that. We're going to keep the Sabbath. We're going to pay the temple tax faithfully. We're going to bring it all in. And even above and beyond that, we're going to provide for the priests and the Levites. And a lot of times the question, what's the difference between a priest and a Levite? Well, let me explain. That all priests are Levites, but not all Levites are priests. Levites are people of the tribe of Levi, one of the 12 sons. And all of those people, they're responsible for all the stuff that takes place around the temple. Some of them are to be priests in the temple, but many of them are other things. In fact, there are things like singers, like we just had up here earlier. That's part of the priestly class, if you will, or part of the Levitical class is those that were up here singing for us, because there were singers, very important part of it. And did you know that in the original, back when they were doing this time, they were provided for by the people as well. There was a salary that was given to them, not to put any ideas in John's head or anybody else's that we're going to start getting that going on. But they paid for all the Levitical class, all the Levites were sponsored for and paid for. And these people said, we're going to take care of them. We're going to take care of all their needs. All their needs are going to be met. We're going to give the first fruit of all of our crops. So when we first go into a harvesting, we're going to give all that to God and at the temple. And they said, we're going to give the firstborn males of animals and people. And you're like, oh, gross. They used to do human sacrifice. Well, that's not what happened, is that they were dedicated to God. And I guess a great example of this is Samuel, he was dedicated to God as a first fruit. And Samuel became a prophet. Now, he was one who brought up in the temple and things of that nature. Not all of them were. Samuel was in a special category, but he was an example of what it meant to dedicate your child to God. In fact, we have some remnants of that today. Don't we have baby dedications? And we do the baby dedication because we're saying, I want to dedicate this child to God. I want them to be able to be used by God as he sees fit. I want God, and part of why we do it is also a cultural thing where we say to one another, this is part of you are my family, my community, and I'm going to want your assistance in helping to raise my child. That we can all be a good example, that we love each other's children. And I know, like this past summer, while we were doing some stuff on the house and demolition and all, I got a chance to interact with a number of your children, and I loved it. It was great for me. I don't know what it was like for them, but it was great for me to have these young people here, for me to get to know them better, for me to see talk to them about their schooling, and I look forward to the weather getting better, so maybe we'll get a chance to do that again when the young people aren't having to go to school or go to their computers or whatever they have to go to these days in order to be educated. And they also said, and we're going to take care of the temple. Whatever needs to be done in the temple, we're going to do that. And there's one other thing that they did. They made that covenant promise. And so they had this big ceremony, and they made all these promises. And they were on a spiritual high. They had just come back from Bible camp, if you will, or from this great conference that they were at, and they were pumped. And they're like, God, we are going to do these things. We're going to be faithful. We're going to take care of all those responsibilities because we see how powerful you are. We just did something that couldn't be done without you. And they were just riding high on that. And you know what happens when you get riding high on stuff, is that we get all pumped up, but it's hard to make it last. Now, I could ask by a raise of hands, though it won't show up very well here on the camera. How many of you have so far stuck with your New Year's resolutions, are still doing them? And I know some of you are. I also know a lot of you have said, what? No, that I don't remember what mine were. It's like, didn't make any because I knew I wouldn't. That's right. Many of you are probably like John, not making resolutions because you know up front they're not going to last. Well, there's another event that happens here coming up, and the time frame here gets to be we're not exactly sure how long it takes, but they decided that they were going to do a dedication of the wall. And so they called for people. They called for all Levites from all over Jerusalem, anybody that had responsibilities around that. So they basically were getting together, all the singers, all the people that took care of the building, all the priests, and said, we're going to need the help because we are going to have a major party and we're going to celebrate and we are going to dedicate the temple. You're like, well, what was that other celebration? Well, that was the Feast of Booths. This is a dedication of the wall. And so they had finished it and said, we need to dedicate this to God. Maybe it's a little bit like when we bought this property. We were excited and we got together and we talked about it and did some things. But then, some weeks later, we decided, hey, let's get here, and we walked the property limits. So we went around the edge and we prayed for the place. And then we stood around the fire and drank hot chocolate and ate donuts and did different things to just be together to celebrate because we wanted to dedicate this property to God. And this is what they did. They had this huge celebration. And there's a few things that took place during this that to me were very interesting. It says that they took two large choirs and one Nehemiah led. Maybe Nehemiah was a good singer. I have no idea. But Nehemiah led, and they went up on the wall, and one went south and one went north. So first off, hopefully you're getting the idea. This is not a little wall because they're able to have people that go up and walk around the building, around the city, on the wall. And they had these two choirs that were large on either side. Now, when I first I was thinking about one of the Promise Keepers events I went to back when Promise Keepers was doing its Promise Keeper thing. And I went to RFK Stadium, which seats about 80,000 people. And I was down there, and at one point, we were all there and we're inside. So we were about 80,000 men. And I don't remember even the song right now. But it might have been Amazing Grace. It might have been, just one. But then all of a sudden, they stopped the instruments and they had us sing a cappella, 80,000 men's voices, just making that place rumble with the vibrations of the voices. And it was, you could feel it in your chest. It was this moving experience to hear all of that going on. And then another thing that we did when I was in college, I traveled with a brass choir. Now, a brass choir is basically brass instruments. So it's a band, not a choir, but they call it a brass choir. Now you're thinking, JD, I didn't know you played brass. I don't. I was a percussionist, and so but they wanted it was brass and percussion. So I traveled as the percussionist part of it, and one of the things that we did is known as we called it antiphonal brass, but there's an antiphonal singing, and what that is, and you'll see it sometimes in churches, in large churches, is that they would put two separate choirs on high walls apart from one another, and one side would sing and the other side would answer, and it's this beautiful. If you've never experienced antiphonal music, it's a beautiful thing of where it's coming back and forth, and then they sing, and it just fills a place with the music. And that's kind of what they did here, is they had this antiphonal choir, and they were all up there, and then the choir's up there singing, and then they march down, and they all come together to the temple to make one gigantic choir as they all sang together, and they celebrate. And I mention it because it's just such a beautiful picture, again, of them worshiping God. They're having this awesome thing, and apparently they're still kind of riding this thing. We don't, like I say, we don't know how long this took. And part of the ceremony, of course, and you'll notice this seems to be a part of every one of their ceremonies, is they read from the book of the law. And now for them, this is not just about, hey, let me hear a Bible verse. This is about, let's rehearse our history. What took place? Let's once again review how God has carried us through. And I think that we would really benefit from learning from this lesson. It's not a prescription that says you must do this, you must get together and have these ceremonies, but it's just a wisdom thing of saying, you know what, there is wisdom in reminding ourselves what God has done to bring us through. How has He brought us along? What has He done with us? Because it's good for us to remember that, because it's so easy for us to start to take for granted. And I get frustrated sometimes here because I'm doing some work. I'm having some troubles with some of the piping. It's just I've got some piping done. It's not passing the pressure test yet, so I'm still working on that, trying to find where I might have a leak in the pipes so I can pass them. And I get frustrated. And then I have to step back sometimes and said, wait, the only reason I'm here doing these pipes is because God blessed us with a property we couldn't afford at a time we could not imagine being able to get it. This is a God thing, and he has blessed us. And I have to step back and say, instead of saying, God, why can't I get this right? To say, God, thank you for the opportunity to be working on these problems. Thank you for the problems that you've brought, which are problems of prosperity. We actually have a building that we can be working on. And so often we find our stress levels are high because of problems of prosperity. I mean, I don't know how many of you have been really frustrated with like car troubles. You have car trouble and you're like, I can't believe this. I've had so much car trouble lately. Did you know that most of the world doesn't even have cars? That in America, the average family has more than 2 cars. That is far from the average anywhere else in the world. Cars are kind of they're a luxury. Living indoors, a luxury. I was frustrated this week. In about a period of 2 days, a toilet seat broke off our toilet. I mean, just the one side of it snapped. I guess the thing had rusted through. Maybe somebody wasn't peeing with accuracy. It was one of the ones that's down on the thing, that get corroded away there. It's one the grandkids use and stuff like that. So I'm not going to blame anybody, but there was a corroded screw that broke, and the toilet seat all of a sudden just sort of swings off to the side. On the same day, or it was that day or the next day, the door lock broke, so that we were locked out of the house. You couldn't come in the door. It was because it's got this electronic thing that you had to do, and so that broke. And then Judy tells me, "Hey, the vacuum cleaner it's not working," and an outlet went dead. And all this happened like within 2 days, and I'm getting there going frustrated, going, I can't believe this. Everything is breaking down all at once. But think about what I'm upset about, the indoor plumbing, which I've enjoyed for so long, I take for granted, that not only should I have indoor plumbing, but I should have a comfortable seat in which to use that indoor plumbing, that I've got a house that I can live in and that is secure, and I'm upset because the lock breaks. And the only reason I have a lock is because I've got things of value in order to protect, and my outlet. I've got electricity throughout my house, and it's so easy for us to look at what's not going well instead of looking at the blessings we have. So this practice that they have of saying, let's go back over and let's review the blessings. Let's review the blessings so we can see how God has been at work in our heart and in our lives all the way along. And they did one other thing that was going on that day, is that because they had promised that they were going to bring all the stuff to the temple, they're going to bring all the offerings, they're going to do the temple tithe, that they had storerooms in the temple that were used to store like the wheat when people bring it in, because not only did that stuff be used for the sacrifices, that was also part of the provision that was used to feed the Levites and things of that nature. So it says on that day, men were appointed to be in charge of the storerooms for the offerings, the first part of the harvest and the tithes. They were responsible to collect from the fields outside the towns the portions required by the law for the priests and Levites. For all the people of Judah took joy in the priests and Levites and their work. Well, that was a good time to be a priest, huh? All the people of Judah, they just took joy in their priests and Levites. And I feel blessed because I do feel that we have a relationship as a church where you take joy in me and I take joy in you. And that is a great feeling, because I know many pastors who feel like they're working against their church instead of with them. So I feel very blessed that I'm with a group of people where we take joy in one another. So we're, in that sense, we're doing pretty good. So all of this is taking place, and you're like, Jay, why are you telling us about guards over the storerooms? I want you to see how serious they were about keeping their promises to God, that they even put people in charge over it. This is when things are going well, and they recognize we need supervision over this. We need to have some ways that we will make sure that this is taking place. Well, at some point, Nehemiah goes back to Artaxerxes, because he had told him in the very beginning, I'll go for a while and I'll come back. So that's one of the things that we do know the time frame on, because it was about 12 years that he was there as the governor. He left. He had appointed people in charge of things. He goes back to Artaxerxes. And while he's back with Artaxerxes, problems start to crop up. And this is a lesson for us. It's a thing. Plans sometimes fail for lack of leadership. And Nehemiah was a strong leader. And apparently the people that he put in charge did not have the same leadership qualities that Nehemiah did, because some things started to happen. One of the things, you remember the guy Tobiah? Tobiah was the buddy of Sanballat. He was like the right-hand man. He had a lot of friends in the Jerusalem hierarchy, if you will. And there was some intermarriage stuff that had gone on, where his daughter was married to somebody. It was to a priest's son, and so they had this connection. And what one of the priests did is he emptied out a storeroom, which was dedicated for the tithes and the offerings, for the first fruits that came in, and he emptied it out and made that room available for Tobias to live in, run an office out of, whatever it was. He made it, and that was Tobias's room. And he did that. And you start to see how you can say, well, maybe the guy really needed it, and it was his father-in-law or his, I guess they're not father-in-laws, it's the father-in-law of his daughter or the father-in-law of his son, I don't remember which one it was right now, who is there. And so he's just trying to help a friend out. And besides, you're just talking about grain. You're just looking at taking out a grain bin and letting somebody use that. What's the big deal? Well, the big deal is they made promises to keep the temple holy in the way that they said they would. That they said, this is set apart for God, and now we're going to use it in a different way. And we might look at those things at times and say, no big deal. God takes those things seriously. When we say, God, I'm dedicating this to you, I'm giving this to you, he assumes that we mean what we say, that we are in fact giving to him what we say we are. And it's easy for us to just sort of not think about that, but Jerusalem starts to fall apart. In fact, we have some intermarriage even of Sanballat and his children starting to intermarry with the priest class. And they said, we're not going to have any of these intermarriages with people that are not. Well, Sanballat, he's not Jewish. Tobiah is not Jewish. These are not folks that are Israelis. They're not part of that community. So they've started to break away. And we find out, and Nehemiah, and he's writing about it, excuse me. He's writing about it, and he's frustrated because he says, because I'm back with Artaxerxes, I'm not there, and I'm getting the reports about how the temple tithe is not being brought in. First fruits are no longer given, that people are doing intermarriage. That long list of promises that they had of where we're going to do this and we're going to do that, they just broke them all. And in fact, I think one of the reasons why God gives us in the passage, while he spells out for us, here's all the things they promised, because it's just a couple of chapters later when you start to see promise after promise right down the line being broken. And it's easy for us to sit here and go, can you believe that they did that? And in honesty, what we should say is, absolutely I can believe it, because I do the same thing. See, I entitled this week's message, Help, because we have great intentions. We have great plans of things that we're going to do. But when it comes down to it, we fall short. We fail. We forget our New Year's resolutions, let alone the bigger promises. There is, and we pat ourselves on the back if we happen to be one of those who doesn't have any infidelity in our marriage. That should not be a pat on the back situation. Excuse me. Just a little drink here. Yeah, just water. But we look at some minimal standards and think we're doing well. The reality is, we're broken people, and we're weak people. And we have great intentions, but poor follow-through. It's hard for us to accomplish what we said that we're going to accomplish. And this is, I don't say this, like feel bad about yourself. I'm saying recognize that we need help. See, what happened is Nehemiah came back from where he was with Artaxerxes, and he went through and started setting things straight. He kicked Tobiah out of the temple and basically said this should have been a no-brainer. He took people out of positions of leadership who were not following through and doing what they were supposed to be doing, that were taking advantage of their position. And he did. I mean, it's fascinating. If you want to go through and read the rest of Nehemiah, I encourage you, because it says that in some cases when he's dealing with these priests, it says that he had to physically beat them. He's going, and I'm just picturing Nehemiah just sort of smacking somebody around a little bit. It's not the model of leadership that we like to think about or picture, but he physically had to beat some because they just would not submit to what was going on. I'm not saying that this is not a prescription of how we are supposed to run the church today. So if you see my car pull up in front of your place, don't start panicking that I brought with me a club and we're going to have a little heart to heart. That is not my style of leadership, is to beat people. But I am teachable. No, just but it's just, he had to work so hard. We're people that need help. And you know what? We need discipline sometimes. I have found that sometimes the only thing that ends up bringing me under control is discipline. I wish that wasn't true. I would love to say every time I become aware that there's a problem in my life, that I just knuckle under, I take care of it, I see, I'm off track, and we get right back on track. Sometimes I see that I'm off track, but I'm like, yeah, but it feels so good, the track that I'm on. This is where I like being, because it's like it's going my way. And then I have to see what going my way does for me, and I see that often through the discipline that Christ has to bring on to me. This project that we're doing here on this piece of land, this is not a short project. There's some steps that are going to happen quickly. There's some things that will go very well. This is a long haul project. And we have to be prepared for the fact that to be in this for the long haul. And the problem with long haul stuff is that we lose our focus. We forget what we're all about. And one of my jobs, I believe, is to remind us, why are we doing this? What are we doing? And as far as I'm concerned, we're doing all of this because there is a lost and broken world who needs to know the love of Christ. There are people within a stone's throw of where I'm standing right now who need to know about Christ. And that's the job that He's called us to. And there are people sitting right now listening to us, watching, because I'm talking about you, who need to be reminded of the love of Christ, and who need to take time out of their lives to worship, who need to take time out of their lives to celebrate God and remember what He's doing. And this will also be a facility where we celebrate God. Now, my personal bias is that far too many churches are, when you think about the building or the organization, they are erected for a small group of people for once or maybe twice a week. That is not my vision at all. I think that it's important that we get together on a regular basis once or twice a week, that we celebrate, that we love on each other, that we remind one another how good it is to be together with one another. But I also think that we need to be reaching out. We need to have a place where this will be a hotbed of compassion and love that is only provided by Jesus Christ. It's the type of love that we can't manufacture and do, but we can only have in Him. So we are going to remind ourselves over and over again what we're here for. I'm asking you, Josh has asked you, we talked about, I'm asking you to dig deep. I'm asking you that beyond what you're already giving, to think and say, what can I do? And let me tell you that every dime that goes to the building fund or to the ministry stuff that we're doing, that's exactly where it goes. We're sticklers about the idea that no money is used in any other way. Because if you're thinking, man, what are you guys doing with all that money that people are giving? We're paying the bills. We're keeping things going. Our books are open. You want to know where the money's going, we're more than happy to show you where every dime is spent, because we have no secrets around that stuff. And I'm asking you to dig deep financially, not so that we can have a cool place, but so that you can invest your funds in something that's eternal, that will last forever. And what's eternal are the souls of everybody around. When I drive in and out of here, as I go through the developments, and I think about all of these may someday be close friends of mine as they get to know us, as they get to be able to be a part of what we have to offer. I don't know who they will be. I don't know what God's going to bring to us, but He has given us a community. And He's given us a responsibility to take care of it, to love it, to reach out to it. And that's what we're doing. That's why we're here. We've had some different events. We've gotten to know some of the neighbors. We've had good relationships, but we're just scratching the surface. We're in this for the long haul. I'm picturing huge things for East Point. And I shouldn't even say for East Point, for the kingdom of God. It's the huge things that East Point gets to be a part of in the kingdom of God. Because East Point is really not what's important. Yeah, we love it. It's our local body. And it's you and it's me. So that's important. I mean, I'm not saying we're not important, but we're not the focus. Jesus is the focus. We're going to build His community. And that's why we're doing this. It's why we're digging deep. Judy and I have been praying about what are we doing financially? What are we going to give? I'm hoping by next week to give you basically some estimates of what the leadership has committed to giving, so that you know. Because I think that's important that the leadership shows first off, hey, we're in this. We're invested. Because obviously, if we're not invested, if I'm not going to give until it hurts, then I have no business of asking you to give until it hurts. And my plan is that what Judy and I give will be, it needs to be a sacrifice. Because like David, I don't want to give anything to God that costs me nothing. And so I'm not just saying, well, I happen to have these few bucks over here sitting around. No, what's money that I would love to spend in some other way? But I'm going to say, no, not my will, but yours, Lord. That I can use this to do what you've got to be done. Because I want to have what I do today last for eternity. Don't know how many days I have left between now and the time when I meet Jesus face to face, but I want to make those days work. I want to make them worthwhile. I want to make them valuable. And I want to, because at the end of my life, I'm not going to be able to say, man, you know what? I had the coolest toys. My shop was awesome. I had about every plane imaginable that you could have, and they were of high quality. Well, that's great, but what difference did I make? What eternal difference did I make? And that's what I want us to look at. So let's pray as we finish up Nehemiah here. God, I just thank you that you have given us Nehemiah's example. You've shown us how he disrupted his life, which was a very comfortable life. And he disrupted it multiple times to come to people who were hurting, people who opposed him, people who gave him a hard time to do what he was doing. But he did it because he loved you. And he recognized that there was something that needed to be done. And we can look at the building of a wall of saying all he did was construction. But Lord, we know that your plan was not just construction, but was in the protection of your people, the demonstration of your power, and the revival of your people at knowing who you are and what you've done and showing them what you can do so that we would be brought back to you, Lord. And Lord, help us to this day to be, let us, just awe at your power as you accomplish here what we cannot do on our own, as you help us to step out on faith to see what you will do. So afterwards we can look and we can celebrate and say, God has done something amazing. And just thank you for the example of Nehemiah. In Christ's name, amen. We have a post-service connection coming up. I imagine that Josh is going to get it started. We're going to get started with that. And probably he and I have to jump out because we're doing a video. I'm not sure if that's how it works, but I'll just rely upon Josh to let me know how we're going to do this as we go through it. So I'll see you soon. Thanks for coming. What's that? 9 o'clock on Saturday, hope they haven't cut me off yet, but 9 o'clock on Saturday is when we're getting together for the moving party. And last time when we had to do a moving thing, it was a lot of fun, and it went really fast. Get a bunch of us here, it goes quickly. So hopefully I'll see you at 9 o'clock on Saturday. And I'll also see you in just a few minutes on the post service. Thanks.